presenters today, so I want to give them as much time as they need to present. How's everybody's Friday? How's everybody's weekend? Good? Good. Excited for the weekend? Well, we're excited to have you here for the very final Lift the Rock of 2019. This is a jam-packed Lift the Rock. Like I said, we've got 3 speakers today. Brian Kutsch with the Little Rock Zoo, the Conservation Education Director there. We've got City Director Capi Webb, who is an entrepreneur and public servant, as well as City Director Capi Peck, who is a restaurant owner and public servant. The whole idea behind Lift the Rock is to bring you awareness on local resources as far as economic development are concerned, as well as entrepreneurship. A little bit first about the Venture Center. For those that aren't familiar, I see a lot of familiar faces, but just in case, our tagline pretty much says exactly what we do. It's very simple: educate, collaborate, and accelerate. We educate the public about entrepreneurship and workforce development. We collaborate with folks in this industry, ESOs, as well as colleges and other folks that have similar missions and visions, and we accelerate the companies that we work with. And to show you a little bit of that, we've got a video that I'd like to play for you.
It's sometimes said it's not about what you know, but who you know. Meet the Venture Center. You can find us on the 6th floor of the city's technology park, in the heart of Little Rock's creative corridor. A hotspot for up-and-coming entrepreneurs who come here to get the connections they need to grow their companies. Because innovation happens here fast.
And the Venture Center was really established to really be a gateway in Central Arkansas for people who have ideas and for entrepreneurs. Also help grow the workforce, to help economic development, and to give people a true place to start.
Networking events and workshops create conversation, community, and competition. While our mentorship programs connect rising professionals with seasoned executives. Our strategic partnerships bring together the best of entrepreneurial talent and resources. It's big benefits through small town connections. Mayor's cell phone number? You got it. For a meeting with the governor? No problem. This is a place where entrepreneurs get stuff done with less red tape and more red carpet.
Arkansas is in the tech arena. We want to grow that because we want a return on the investment by building the technology sector here in this state.
Early-stage technology companies from around the world seeking a fast track to success compete for a spot in our accelerators. Why? Because our program puts visionaries in front of VIPs. Through an immersive curriculum, these cohorts are able to evolve their companies and go-to-market strategies alongside the C-level suite executives and investors that have the clout to take them to the next level. The Venture Center creates connections that are the catalyst for opportunity, and our door is open to those eager to fuel the entrepreneurial engine. So come, introduce yourself. We'd love to meet you.
So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the Venture Center is about and what we do. Special thanks to the Little Rock Regional Chamber. They're always supporting us in everything that we do. The Tech Park, we love being on the 6th floor of the Tech Park. It's a pretty nice, swanky space that we like being on. And then thanks to Mose for having lunch for us today. If you follow us and you check in today, let them know that you're here at the Venture Center at Lift the Rock. You can use hashtag VCLiftTheRock. Our website, venturecenter.co, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. We're on all the social media channels. You can check us out and find all our future events there as well. Some that I wanted to bring up, next week, Tuesday the 19th, we have a pop-up. We're going to have Brandon Andrews with Sharp Pink. He's a casting director there, and he will be here to talk about diversity, inclusion, and standing above the crowd. So be sure to register for that if you want to see that. We have a lunch and learn with our Spark participants. That's our pre-accelerator cohort that's going on right now. It wraps up December 18th. But before that, we'll have them, we'll have a moderated panel where you can ask questions and learn a little bit more about these local companies that are here and how we can support them. Also, our favorite event, Pitch and Pint, is taking place December 10th It's South on Main. Be sure to register for that, and whether you're going to apply to pitch or you just want to register to watch, all that information's on our website. There's a chance to win up to $6,000 for your pitch. So you definitely want to be a part of that. It's a great opportunity. Without further ado, everyone please welcome Brian Kutsch with the Conservation Education Curator for Little Rock Zoo. Okay.
So you were talking about startups and entrepreneurship, and I don't view what I'm doing a whole lot different. Starting education programs, they need to be viable things that we can do for the long term. So a lot of what you'll see me talking about today are different programs that might earn revenue or reach out to the community in different ways. And might as well get started. So the zoo's mission is creating engaging experiences that inspire people to value and conserve our natural world. That needs to be tied into everything that we're doing. It's pretty easy to do when you're strictly working with conservation and education and animals at the zoo. But let me get to my first slide here. So memorable programming at the zoo. I use this first slide to go over some of the things that we have going on at the zoo that I'm not actually going to dive too far into. So we have lots of engaging things to do when you visit the zoo, wildlife shows, other on-grounds programs like birthday parties, behind the scenes, awareness days. Awareness days would be like there's one coming up Saturday that's recycling awareness day, so the activities get themed in different ways to change up your experience when you visit the zoo. We have outreach that we do across central Arkansas, but really we'll go across the state. In some cases we're driving 2 and 3 hours one way to go deliver a program. We have a couple of vans and animals. That's how Stephen got here today, so we'll have an animal guest towards the end of the presentation. But those vehicles will bring animals with education programs, with themes, and the animals, we call them animal ambassadors, so they're out being ambassadors for their species and going across the state. Those have been, pretty much everything I talked about right there has been a staple of the education department for quite some time. Since I'm at the Venture Center, I thought maybe I'd go into summer camp and spring, summer, and winter camp a little bit more, just because when you're talking about a startup and getting a business off the ground, that really wasn't a whole lot different. I've been here a little under 2 years, and the program growth has been fantastic. The networking here in Little Rock's been insane. I feel like it's moved extremely fast, which is great. And with our camp program, so 2 years ago there were about 100 kids in the program, and the first summer that I came in, we had a little over 300, and last summer we basically ran out of space. We need more buildings, which we're working on, but we had about 650 kids during the summer, and went from 2 years ago was about $10,000, and last summer was a little over $116,000. But we also probably passed up on about $35,000 in revenue because we just didn't have anywhere to put the kids. The zoo's growing fast. They're moving with me pretty quick. This just got incredibly popular really, really fast. It also helped to pull in, we got a sponsor from McClarty Auto as our camp sponsor. They gave $75,000 to the program to help us bring in some buildings, and they're giving $5,000 a year over 5 years for scholarships. So there are some other places where we're able to get scholarship money, but McClarty was the big donor there. And then I went through the Little Rock School District and UA Little Rock Children's International to help distribute that money to the right folks in the community. When summer camp became incredibly popular, and I should say, just we're aware of what it takes to run that business. So I'm never one who really runs things at break even. So we track our expenses and our revenue very closely and have it competitively priced, but keep our expenses low so that we're able to contribute money back to the zoo and the city. With summer camp getting so popular, that fed over into winter and spring. And last winter, because we've only run it once, last winter we had 80% of the people that filled up our winter break camp were people who came from summer camp because they were just incredibly happy with the summer camp program. And then spring was much the same way. We just released our sales opened our sales for our winter break camp's second season. And within the first about 48 hours, it outsold last year. So we're fortunate that we're able to hire on seasonal teachers for our summer camp, because we'll use those folks to help us run winter and spring as they grow in popularity. So getting towards the unique programming that I've been going around the community and talking about, you'll see common themes that we're working with underserved youth. You'll see programming that works both locally, regionally, and statewide. There's quite a bit of teacher professional development going on now as well. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums is the international accrediting body that the zoo is accredited by, and we're trying to work in some of their efforts into what we're doing a bit more. And then lots of partners. I know everybody's aware of city budget cuts, and the zoo's doing just fine, but I need to figure out creative ways that I can reach out into the community and find, whether it's funding or physical resources or people to help us out with programs. So you'll see a lot of partners that have worked their way into the programming that we're doing. So programs focus on underserved youth. We have our Zoo Academy. That was one of the first things that we started. And it's moving along. It's moving along a little slower than I would hope, but we're definitely going to hang on to it because is anybody aware of the Ford NGL stuff going on in the community? Ford Next Generation Learning. That's a big initiative between, where's Buckley? Buckley knows. That's a big initiative between Chambers of Commerce and between the Jacksonville, I always get the acronym wrong, North Pulaski School District, Little Rock, North Little Rock, and Pulaski County Special School District. And it's very academy focused, so we're kind of getting our feet wet, trying to gain a little bit of experience in the academy area so that we're ready when that initiative pushes forward. But the Zoo Academy works with J.A. Fair High School. We work with roughly the same, we'll say 7 to 10 kids year over year. The goal is that they're coming out to the zoo as often as we can get them, and then we're going out to the classroom. What they're working on, and this is where it's also kind of venture center, tech related, is I don't know if it's just because I grew up in the start of the tech age and enjoy technology, but also because my belief is that if we're going to stay with or ahead of the issues that wildlife, nature are facing, you're not going to be able to do it the same old, biologist way that even I grew up with. I had an internship in Alaska and got to go out to the Aleutian Islands, and I was doing studies where we were trying to save this endangered goose, which after it was saved, they decided, oh, it's not really a separate species. So we did all this work to save it, and then they were like, never mind. But I was literally out there with a square, throwing it over my head because it had to be random and counting plants inside the square. That's not really what's going to cut it anymore. The issues that wildlife are facing are moving too fast. So when we're working with these kids, we want to teach them about wildlife, but work in some technology-related solutions. So they're working on app development. App design is what I should say. They're not necessarily coding it from the ground up, and it's related to African penguins, which we have at the zoo. I wanted to tie it in with something somewhat relevant, really out there in social media, so not just African penguin conservation, because they have a variety of issues that they're facing, but it's also going to relate to single-use plastic issues and how we can help solve those sorts of problems, because there's a lot of plastic in our oceans. So the kids are helping to work on app design. The other project that we've had to kind of put on hold for right now, but it's as we grow this building area for where the education buildings are popping up out of the zoo, is we want to put a garden in between these 3 buildings, and you can buy what's called a farm bot, and it attaches to a rectangular raised bed, and it looks like a shipping dock crane that can move up and down the raised bed, and it can change implements and suck up a seed and plant it right where you tell it to plant. It actually can stamp out weeds, and it can water the plants as well. But the kids have to put it together. They have to work with the program and tell it what to do. Where do you want the cabbage or the carrots to be planted? How often does it need to be watered? All that kind of stuff. So these are the kind of projects that the Zoo Academy kids can work on. Zoo Excel-a-thon was something that's pictured right there that we did with the Little Rock School District. The Zoo Excel, so the Little Rock School District has a program called Excel. It's a career strand-based program, and they had a competition, a one-day pitch competition, also kind of Venture Center tie-in. One-day pitch competition that students were solving a problem. I said, well, can we take that over and put a conservation spin on it? And so they received a problem statement at about 10 o'clock on the day of the competition. There were about 10 groups of 10. They received a problem statement at 10. They had to come up with their solution between 10 and about 1, along with a PowerPoint presentation. And everybody in their group had to present, even if it was one sentence. The most shy kid in the group still had to get up there and say something. So then they gave their pitches to their crowd watching them. There were judges up front, and then everybody was ranked. We pulled in sponsors. The Tech Park was a sponsor, Garber was a sponsor, State Foods, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but the kids first through third place, each team and each kid on those teams received a cash prize. And it's something that we hope to continue in the years to come. So another example of, we were encouraging them to work tech into their solutions. Their solution this past go around was to figure out ways to get teenagers to visit the zoo, to become more engaged in the zoo, because we often see families with younger ones, and then as the younger ones grow up, they don't always come back until they have kids of their own. So how can you engage that middle crowd? WOW, or Wonders of Wildlife, is a program also with the Little Rock School District. I went to meet with some admin staff really early on and said I wanted to do a program where we were reaching as many kids as we could, and making sure it was impactful. A visit to the zoo is wonderful. They do learn. They probably create some wonderful memories, but how much does it change their behavior in the long run? Are they really being impacted in the long run? So this is where you'll see a lot of partners start to come in. So we agreed that we would set up a program where they were receiving materials before they visited. They received a special tour once they visited the zoo, downloadable materials afterwards, and then we wanted to reach out into after school. So beforehand, we started building kits that go to the schools before they visit. The Central Arkansas Library System started, they donated books. We're now working with the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub, and they're 3D printing biofacts. That would be things like skulls or bones that we can put in the kits, put information with them, and then the teachers can use those kits to teach the kids. So library, the Innovation Hub. Then when they are visiting the zoo, they get a station tour. They get to go around the stations that are staffed by, or run by either staff or volunteers. Afterwards, there's downloadable materials for the teachers, and then somewhere in the months after that, there's no timeline on this one, we're working with UA Little Rock Children International, and then the UA Little Rock STEM Center, their staff will be going out into Children International's sites to do after-school programming. So now you're talking about a good 2 weeks at least worth of learning. And the school district took it one step further. They actually wrote in zoo, they're just calling it zoo curriculum, into their learning. So they're learning about conservation-related things before they even get their kids. So it's really a good, heavy dose of conservation, and I think I'd like us to evaluate the program a bit more, but so I don't have proof of this, but I think one that's having a bit more of an impact than just your average visit to the zoo. Then you have Project Zoo, and that's one that I hope you'll hear a lot more about. Give me like a year. I need a little bit of time on this one. I think you hear a whole lot about it in a couple of years. This one's the one that could branch throughout the state. So you have project-based learning that's real catchy throughout the state, well, everywhere. You have project-based learning that's catchy throughout education. And I like tech-related solutions. So we started working with some East Initiative classrooms. Stephen had kids printing 3D biofacts to use at the zoo. I've been working with, it was a group of girls last year. There's one girl who went from 6th grade to 7th grade, and she's had to recruit some new team members, but they're developing an interactive app, and they are coding it from the ground up, that we can use with students at the zoo that'll tell you about the tiger when you're looking at the tiger, but it'll also, they're working on voice-guided directions, so you'll be able to be at the ostriches and ask for directions to penguins, and it's going to voice guide you all the way there. It's really cool. We meet with them every so often, coach them along, and give them some advice. But apply that philosophy with project-based learning and conservation principles to anything, and then because those girls would need to be at the zoo occasionally to map it out, But in terms of somebody building, there's a group that wants to work on a pond skimmer, a solar-powered pond skimmer that would help us pick up leaf litter on the top of one of our ponds. That could happen anywhere. So we're now working with classrooms in Fayetteville, and I'm trying to make some connections in Delta. Now, we only have to work with them every couple of months. We can start to disperse projects throughout the zoo to other departments, and there's a whole application system based on it right now. And we're actually working with a second-year Clinton School student. He's using it. He's going to help us set up evaluation tools as a capstone project. And another student came in who's doing a marketing project, not a capstone or a practicum, and she wants to help develop marketing and get it throughout the state. But I think that one's going to catch on pretty quickly. Teacher professional development. Once we started going out to some of the workshops and conferences throughout the state and started talking about these kind of programs, we started getting interest in organizations who wanted us to do professional development. So we've been doing, and I bring this one up because the fact that we're doing PD is great, but we're doing, again, very different professional development. So it includes topics related to economics. We've been developing our whole own Build a Zoo program. So there are other Build a Zoos out there, but it's very much spatial. You know, you have 10 blocks and an elephant's going to take up 2 blocks, and we put money associated with how much it costs to care for an elephant. We can work in things like if you have a carousel, the carousel will generate X amount of dollars per year, so you can now have another animal. So we're working with economics throughout the state, and actually I need to send an email to, we work with Economics Arkansas, because we're talking with Marcia about creating kits that could travel across the state as well. Reading was another professional development opportunity that we just did, and then we got the opportunity to help open up the Arkansas Education Association conference just recently. I'm watching my time because I can talk an awful long time about some of these things. This one I threw in right before I turned over my presentation to the Venture Center. No one's going to have heard about this quite yet, but wait, you will. I have a meeting next week at City Connections offices with some site reps around the area. So City Connections is going to help us recruit an awful lot of volunteers to work with AZA's Earth Day related initiative, which is called Party for the Planet, Spring into Action. Next year is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, so we're really going to try and make this a big deal. We do want to make it an annual thing as well, but we're looking at a minimum of 2,000 volunteers who would be helping out on April 25th. This is something that businesses want to assist in the community. This will eventually have an application that goes out. The one thing I'm waiting on right now is we need to figure out how many volunteers our sites can take. We already have enough to take up 2,000, but I need to see how many beyond that we can distribute throughout the community. But I think we're getting ready for possibly 2,000 to 3,000 volunteers throughout Central Arkansas, and this should be a really cool way for community members, businesses to get involved in a large environmental cleanup with the help of Norm. I'm sure many of you know Norm, but he's the one helping us identify some of the sites throughout the community. Just a quick slide, I won't read through all that of many of the different partners that we have, but this was what I was saying about partners. They're all pulling their own weight. They're all getting to check off boxes of things that they need to do at their organization through programs that we put together. So everybody's own organization is benefiting from this, but we're coming together to collaborate and create conservation-based programming that has been pretty impactful, at least in the first couple of years. And then real quick, the AZA stuff that we're trying to work into some of this programming, which I didn't dive real far into. You'll have things related to species survival programs and saving animals from extinction, which is called SAFE for short. But basically those are programs that the SSP, Species Survival Program, does a lot of things within zoos to help monitor genetics and animal welfare. And the SAFE program does things overseas, so we can work some of their goals and ideas into what some of the students are doing. So if you have a student who wants to develop an app, maybe we can tie that into a project overseas. It just helps us make it to where the possibilities are relatively endless, so to speak. It doesn't have to be within the Little Rock Zoo. We can really dream big and and worldwide when we're talking about tying it into AZA initiatives. And then just that education is key to everything we're doing at the zoo, and I think, based on what I was talking about before, that's probably fairly evident. Projects that are in development, we'll hopefully be releasing. I need a little bit of help from some folks that are working with me yet, but I want to do a coding challenge. It would be an educational app that kids would develop for kids about saving orangutans. There are some committees that I'm on that are involved in saving orangutans. We're working with Baker Elementary, which is an economics-focused school, and Lawson, which just became an e-school, but they already had an agriculture program there, to where we'll provide them with real data about what it takes to care for orangutans, which will include costs for food. Baker's going to put that, the kids will put that together into a budget, and then Lawson will grow the food, and then we'll have them out to the zoo, and they'll get to see their food being fed to the orangutans. And then Lisa Academy is interested in doing something similar to what happens here in Little Rock, a found object trash art contest. So, contact information up there. I know I'm starting to push towards the end of my time slot, and we have special guests. So I'll stay, so I can always answer your questions later, and if we have time at the end, before I'm cut off, I can answer questions then. But Steven, how long you been here? 2+ years?
2.5 years around about.
Steven's been, I knew it was 2+, an educator for 2.5 years at the zoo, and is trained on every single animal that we can present.
Pretty much, yeah.
And who do you have with us today?
So I have Gizmo, who is our military macaw. Like Brian said, my name is Steven. I'm one of the educators here at the zoo. I'm the guy that does lots of camp stuff. I'm the guy that brings out lots of animals. And so Brian wanted me to bring Gizmo here today to show you guys a little bit of what we do. So he mentioned towards the beginning of the PowerPoint that one of the big things, basically the cornerstones of our program is outreach. And obviously the educators are a big part of the outreach, but it's nothing without the animals. So Gizmo here is one of our animal ambassadors. He's going to make a real mess. I'll clean it up at the end. So Gizmo is a military macaw, and Gizmo is one of, well, let's see. If you don't count the farm and penguins, Gizmo is one of over 30 or 40 animals that we take on programs. If you count the farm and penguins, we're up above 50, 60, 70 animals that we take care of and take all around Arkansas to schools, to old folks' homes, to scout troops. Hi. We do shows at the zoo. Basically everything under the sun and everywhere in Arkansas, we take these guys. And really they are the core of our program, because it's one thing for people to come to the zoo and see these animals, but it's another thing for us to take these animals to people and get those up-close personal experiences that hopefully inspire conservation action, or at least a love of nature. So Gizmo here is a type of macaw or parrot that is found in South America and Mexico. These guys are called military macaws. There's two stories for it. One is that their color represents a military uniform, the green and red and that kind of thing. I have also heard a story that flashed on the front row there. So I have also heard stories that soldiers would bring these guys home as pets after having campaigns in South America. So competing stories. We love to bring out parrots because not only are they very pretty animals, they're very fun to show off, and they are very interactive. But they also have a lot of cool things that we can show people, like Gizmo's very messy lunch here. So one of the things that, one of the things that we love to talk about with parrots, and Gizmo in particular is one of our best for this, is that parrots are very messy eaters with very, very strong beaks. So in the wild, these guys eat fruits, seeds, nuts. Some parrots can even crack open coconuts. So if you can imagine, that means that they have incredibly strong beaks. Gizmo's in particular is made for a crushing motion. So even these, big, what are these, almond, whatever I got here, he can crush these open like it's nothing. It's very terrifying to put your hand up to a parrot the first time you meet it. To be honest, Gizmo and I have been working on our relationship for about 3 years now. He historically is not a huge fan of men. So, I am both very happy that he is doing this right now and kind of terrified for my fingers, but it's working out so far. So, in the wild, these guys eat, just as messily as you can see here, and it's not necessarily. It's actually a very good thing out in the wild. We grumble about it sometimes because we have to clean it up at the zoo. But out in the wild, these guys are what's called seed dispersers. So they crack open these fruits and seeds and nuts, all that kind of stuff, and they drop seeds and various things on the ground. Those actually help replant rainforests. So they have an incredibly important job at replanting those trees and plants in their native homes. Now, closer to home, the other thing we like to talk about with these guys, which Gizmo also shows up very nicely. So for all of our animals, we try and, like I said, inspire conservation action or spread some sort of conservation messaging. So for each of our animals, we have a certain thing that we talk about, things that people of all ages can do to help these guys out in the wild. So for penguins, utilizing less straws or one-use plastics. No, it's so good. And with Gizmo, with parrots in particular, Gizmo especially, the thing that we like to talk about is doing proper pet research. This is important for kids, it's also important for adults too. So Gizmo is a former pet. We're not really sure what his life was like before he got to us, but whoever had him decided they couldn't take care of him and gave him up to the zoo. And Gizmo is a great example of talking about how parrots are terrible pets. Such bad pets. They are gorgeous, and they are very fun, but the parrots have about the intelligence people say of a 3-year-old, so toddler age, except they are very smart but never get a whole lot smarter than that toddler age. So if you fancy taking care of a toddler for 60, 70, 80 years, depending on the species, a toddler who, with their beak, can break any bone in your hand, a toddler who can scream with some species louder than a jet engine, and a toddler who just loves getting into things and destroying stuff and making a mess and going to the bathroom all over your house. If all that sounds good to you, go ahead and get a parrot. Usually that doesn't sound good to people, so we always like to say that as much as we love parrots, we love that we can leave them at the zoo and that we don't have to take them home. But it's these kind of messages and these kind of experiences that really help kind of bring our whole messaging together. Because like I said, when we can go out to a school and have people see these things up close, it really inspires those close connections. So I think we have a few minutes for questions. Yeah.
Any questions?
So questions about the programming or about the animals or whatever.
How old is he?
That's a good question that I don't particularly know the answer to. He is not over 20. So he's still got a lot of time left. This species, like I said, can be anywhere from like 60 to 70. So he'll be with us for quite a while. That's another thing about getting a parrot as a pet. Depending on when you get it, it might outlive you. And parrots are very smart, so they form really emotional bonds with their owners. So if you pass away, you've got a very sad parrot on your hands. So get something else.
Yeah.
If anybody hasn't been to the zoo in a while, I suggest to check out the zoo's Facebook page, just where a lot of the events are posted pretty frequently. But there are plenty of things to do if you're not a casual Saturday afternoon zoo visitor, between brew at the zoo or what they call Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras, yeah.
And even tonight, after we leave here, we're going to have to take a minute to breathe, and then there's Spotted at the Governor's Mansion. So there's a fundraiser for Cheetah Conservation Fund at the Governor's Mansion, and there will be a cheetah, not ours, on a leash from Columbus, Ohio, at the Governor's Mansion for pictures. So there are lots of other ways to stay engaged with the zoo. Like I said, even if it doesn't come into your mind on a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon to come visit, there are lots of other events going on. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Brian, Stephen, and Gizmo. Leave plenty of room. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
Unless I forget who's going after me, but if you're mobile, you might want to run out of your way.
All right, up next, we've got Kathy Webb. And no presentation, but she will take it from here. Please welcome Kathy Webb.
kind of a difficult thing to do. But thank you all for coming today, and thanks for having me here to talk for a few minutes. When I was a kid, if you had ever said the word entrepreneur would have even been in a sentence with my name, I would have said you were absolutely crazy. As a sixth grader, I wanted to be a baseball player or a politician. And so I was not a very good hitter. Had to abandon the idea of a baseball career. But from the time I was a little kid, I always loved public policy and wanted to work to change public policy, particularly as it related to discrimination against women, starting in the sixth grade. I was really fortunate to be able to go to Washington, D.C. as a young adult and work in the political arena and the women's movement full-time for a number of years. And it was the most rewarding thing just about that I've ever done. It was also the most challenging, and it was 24/7. I worked with volunteers all over the country, which means that when my work week ended on Friday in mid-afternoon, I would hop on a plane and go somewhere, spend the entire weekend, sometimes take a red-eye back, and then be back at the office on Monday. After a period of time, that gets a little bit old. When my time at that job was coming to an end, it's like, what am I going to do next? And I wanted to do something radically different to kind of take a break. I got home one day from work and there was a door hanger on my door advertising a job in the restaurant industry. It said, come and be a manager with us, make $100,000 a year, run 10Ks, do all this stuff. And I thought, I could do that. That's a sign, I could do that. Even though I'd almost failed home ec as a high school student or junior high school student. So I answered the ad, and I suddenly was delivering pizzas, mopping floors, and doing all sorts of things like that was very different from lobbying the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives. But I moved up with that company and did very well, and had a wonderful boss, and actually just loved the restaurant business. But about 6 years into it, I thought, I would like to do a little bit more. I would like to be the final decision maker. And there were two main reasons that I decided I wanted to go out on my own. One, I didn't want to ever look back and wonder if I could have done it. And the second, my boss was involved in many, many nonprofit organizations and charities, and they were not ones necessarily that I would have chosen, and I wanted to be able to make those kind of decisions myself. He helped me get a job with a national bagel company in Chicago. So I left my fabulous job in Washington, D.C., moved to Chicago on January 1st. The wind chill was 30 below. My dogs thought I had done something really bad, and so did I. And I went to work for this bagel company, having a stake in the company itself. Fast forward, the company, which was privately held, went public. They bought out our contracts. I had just built a new house in Chicago. So what am I to do? Open my own restaurant. And I spent a year going through all my old family recipes and opened a barbecue restaurant in Chicago. And it was really cool. I made pitches to people like we saw earlier. I pitched a lot of people and got a lot of no's. But I got some yeses too, and I got all the yeses that I needed. I loved being in the restaurant business. I love being able to make the decisions. I love being able to come up with ideas. And I've always said, and I think it's true even now, that I have a whole lot of ideas and a lot of them are really bad. But I try to make the ones that are really bad things that are not super expensive, that cost a whole lot of money, that didn't bankrupt the restaurant. When I moved back to Little Rock, I came back as a restaurateur and loved every second of it, very involved in the community. I don't care what kind of business you're in, you can be super involved in the community. For me, it was hard to sort of balance my community involvement with business because I really went back to my first love, which was public service. and sold the restaurant and got elected to the legislature. I do have a job with a nonprofit now, and like Brian mentioned, he's got some kind of entrepreneurial things he does at the zoo. And at the Hunger Relief Alliance, one of the things I like about us is that sometimes we can be very nimble. And a lot of nonprofits or a lot of big businesses, you can't be nimble. There are all these things that you got to do. And so we're very nimble. We had somebody tell us that she was splitting her pills every day, a senior, so she could buy ground beef once a week for that kind of protein from the ground beef. So what did we do? We called somebody we know who's a rancher, and we said, could we have a cow? And we started the Arkansas Beef Project. And we now take donations of cows, plus we get a nickel at a lot of sale barns, and we get the cows processed, and we have ground beef that we send out to food pantries so people can get that ground beef at food pantries. One year we had about 200,000 pounds of tomatoes that somebody gave to us because they were not perfect. They couldn't sell them in a grocery store. So what did we do? We had a friend who was a chef. He gave us a recipe. We went up to the University of Arkansas where they have that manufacturing facility, and we made jars and jars and jars and jars and jars of spaghetti sauce, which then we sold for holiday presents, birthday presents, whatever. We have lots and lots and lots of spaghetti sauce. So we're able to do a lot of things like that. Take a chance. Again, if you're a donor to the Alliance, I guarantee you that I'm not doing anything that's totally crazy and going to lose a bunch of money with some of these ideas like that. But it has been, I think there will always be that entrepreneurial streak that I didn't know I had. As we continue to do new things at the Hunger Relief Alliance, reach out to new partners, try new programs. Cappy and I have worked together on a lot of programs. She is one of our best volunteers and hardest working volunteers. One of the programs, and I'll finish up your time in me, right?
Yes.
So one of the coolest programs we do,
You have 6 minutes.
okay, is we teach cooking classes to low-income families so they can learn how to cook and shop healthy on a budget. And Cappy was the first chef in Arkansas who taught these classes in Spanish. And that was a pretty cool thing, and it's been a great class. We've had success all around the state. But also at the beginning, there was something that said about it's not what you know, it's who do you know. And we work really hard to make relationships. A friend of a friend introduced us to a warden from one of the correctional facilities in Arkansas. And he said, I'm looking for some new programs to teach folks called the Legacy Program, and it's 6 months to a year before you're going to be released. You get to take these classes of things that are going to help you develop some skills so your odds for success when you go home are going to be higher than they otherwise would have been. So we worked with him over a period of a few months to teach him how to teach the classes, because it wasn't like a regular class that I could just say, hey, Cappy, can you go out to so-and-so and teach this class? All sorts of things that they had to do differently. But we've got those classes now in both men's and women's correctional facilities across the state. And it's the most popular class in the Legacy Program. He always has a waiting list. And in January, and this is one of the most exciting things, in my opinion, that we've had this year, he's been asked to give a presentation on this at the National Convention for all of the states for the Departments of Corrections. So, I mean, what if we could get this in every state in the country and give people a skill and hope that they can take with them when they get out of the Department of Correction? And the feedback we've gotten from participants is phenomenal. One woman said, I didn't know how to cook. I didn't learn that from my mom. When I get out, I have a skill that I can teach my 3 kids. And so to her, something like that is making all the difference in the world. Be an entrepreneur, go for it, and also talk to Cappy or to me about ways that you can get involved with the community. A lot of great nonprofits out there, a lot of great neighborhood associations. The president of one of my neighborhood associations from Ward 3 is here today. So get involved, but go for it. Keep having those ideas and don't worry about the bad ones. Keep got 1 minute?
Any questions for Kathy? If one pops up later. Oh.
What administration were you working for?
Oh, actually, I worked for the National Organization for Women.
No, when you went to Washington.
In Washington. It was the National Organization for Women. It was the largest women's political organization in the United States. I was a national officer, which was an elected position. I ran nationally for that job. And at the end of that tenure, I did work for President Clinton briefly.
A lot of people in Little Rock did.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Up next, we've got Capi Peck. Let's welcome her to the front.
Okay, so Kathy has to follow a parrot, and I have to follow Kathy, which I do quite often. In fact, that's how I got into public service and running for city councils, because she talked me into it. And thought I was absolutely crazy. She said, "You're a successful restaurateur. If you can run a restaurant, you know how to listen, you know how to be organized. It's easy." Well, it's not easy, but I'll backtrack a little bit. Yeah, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. My background is a little bit different than Kathy's because I'm the 4th generation person in my family to be in the hospitality business in Arkansas. So I come by very honestly. I didn't think that was going to be my career path. I did several other things initially, and then one day I woke up and thought, I love to cook, I love to nurture people, I love to feed the soul. I'm going to open up a restaurant. At the time, my grandmother and my father tried to talk me out of it. They said that was the biggest mistake I could make, that the hardest part of the hotel business was the food end of it, but I did it anyway. And that was 34 years ago. And I just about figured it out. At any rate, I was a restaurateur and pretty much just did that for the first 18 years, and it was tough. It's a tough business. 4 out of 5 restaurants closed within the first 5 years. It is a labor of love. I often do a little show and tell with my staff and take 2 rolls of pennies and open them up and throw them on the table and say, okay, how many pennies do you think we actually get to take home, my partner and I? How much do you think we make from these 100 pennies? And most of them will rake off, 3/4 of them or half of them. And then when I remove 3 pennies, they go, OMG. It's true. It's a tough business, but it's super rewarding. So about 18 years into it, a friend approached me about being on the Advertising and Promotion Commission. That's the governing body for the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I'm telling you this story because this is what whetted my appetite for public service. I served on the A&P Commission, a very small commission of only 7 people, as the restaurant representative. And I learned so much about travel and tourism, the tremendous economic impact it has, the 2nd largest economic impact in our state. And it just gave me a sense of pride. It gave me a real sense of pride to be a voice for restaurateurs because I think currently the restaurant and lodging tax puts about $15 to $16 million into the coffers of Little Rock. It's huge. The CVB, which is the destination marketing organization for the city, owns Robinson Auditorium, Robinson Center, State House Convention Center, manages the river market, several parking decks, and has a huge economic impact. So after that service, I ended up serving as chair. I co-chaired the Restore Robinson campaign that was successful, that gave us a state-of-the-art performance hall. And then it just sort of morphed into a different kind of public service. running for city director after my work wife over here talked me into it. And sometimes when I'm at a meeting that's a little contentious or a little long or a little frustrating, I might shoot her a text that says, "I hate you," with that little smiling turd emoji. Sorry. Can you say turd? My favorite emoji. But you know, from the get-go in 1986, even when Trios, I haven't even said the name of my restaurant, Trios Restaurant, 8201 Cantrell, sorry. Even during the struggling times, and there were some difficult times, I opened up a second restaurant in 2008, the absolutely worst time I could have opened one, and I closed it in less than 3 years. So I have made some big, big mistakes. But from the very beginning, one of the most key things as far as taking care of my staff, which I am very proud of, got a lot of longevity there, was giving back to the community. Because the community's been so supportive, not just of my family, my current family, but 4 generations strong. And it's also something that I think I just do naturally. I'm a giver. I'd much rather give than take. I'm one of those people that I don't really want you to do anything. Let me do it for you. That's sometimes a flaw. But whether it's a cultural institution, whether it's the Hunger Relief Alliance, or Carti, or the Ronald McDonald House, or Valley, Arkansas, or the zoo, or our house, or youth home, we give, and we give. I don't think you'll find many industries that are so generous as the restaurant industry. Go to any fundraiser, you'll see us serving soup, making, chocolate brownies, whether it's organizing meals for the TSA agents during our partial government shutdown, or to going to Jericho Way to help prepare meals for the homeless. We are a giving community of very hardworking people, and that I'm incredibly proud of that. So, as entrepreneurs, as you are branching out and deciding what you're going to do, don't forget about giving back. Volunteerism is the soul, the heart and soul of our community, and it's a way to connect with people. I often tell people I feel like I've got the best job in the world as a restaurateur, because I think it's one of the last horizons where people take some time to disconnect from their devices, hopefully, and have meaningful conversation and relationships with each other. Slow down and just make a true connection. And that's what you can do as a volunteer. If you're interested in feeding, Kathy's got many programs to get involved in. I can also give you a list of other organizations that can use help. And I want to mention one project that I'm working on that's actually tomorrow, but it's not too late to sign up. It's called Impact the Rock. It's a day of unity and service throughout the whole city of Little Rock. We have projects, Little Rock's divided into 7 wards. So we've got a couple of projects in each ward or neighborhood, and we are coming together to, for instance, plant trees at MacArthur Park, paint park benches in Canis and in the Pankey neighborhood. We have a crew of 50 at the zoo, Animal Village. We have Adopt a Street projects, flower bed projects. If you like the water, you can go to Fish Creek and get in a canoe or a kayak and clean up the debris. That's where all our wastewater goes. There's Rock Creek Trail System. There's really something for everyone, and it's going to be a little bit warmer. But you can sign up at littlerock.gov/volunteer. And even if you don't want a specific project, just collaborate with a school or a church or right here at the Venture Center and list your collaborative project and get involved that way. I tell people all the time, I love Little Rock, and the thing that I can do that makes me feel best is to give back to others, to give back to the city, especially to people who need it, who have less than we have. What else? Did I say? I talked so fast. Any questions? Anybody? So if you're thinking about going into food service to the restaurant industry, you might want to talk to me. I may not necessarily talk you out of it, but I did want to say one more thing about the Convention and Visitors Bureau and how important tourism is to Pulaski County. It is the biggest economic driver, and we like to say in my industry we have all these temporary taxpayers that come in and stay in our hotels and motels, eat in our restaurants, shop in our stores, and have a big economic impact, and then go away. And we like to say we get heads in beds and butts in seats. And it has a $16 million end result at the end of the year. And with those monies, after running the facilities that the Convention and Visitors Bureau owns, we can do things like wayfaring projects, we can work on the river trail, we can do things like restore the military museum, we've got the art center lodging tax that we just passed, and really have an impact on quality of life issues for people that live here. So it's a great industry, it's huge, but it's an important piece of the economic pie. And that wasn't the last thing. I do want to say two things. Two things I think that the city needs just about more than anything to continue this growth in tourism and travel is we need to expand our Statehouse Convention Center. We just lost the biggest convention we have, the ATA Taekwondo event that happens every May, 25,000 visitors. The world headquarters is still here, but we simply did not have the convention space to accommodate them. So we've got to figure out a way to grow the convention center. The other thing is we must have a multi-sports complex. The biggest piece of the pie as far as economic impact on travel and tourism is amateur sports. It's like 70%. And we're losing all kinds of business to Bryant and Benton and Cabot and Burns Park and surrounding areas because we don't have that multi-sports complex. There's all sorts of talk going around. Is that going to be part of War Memorial or Hyman or what will that look like and what will it be? Well, it's got to be something. We've been talking about it for years. So, put on your entrepreneurial hats and figure out how we can grow the Statehouse Convention Center and how we can get a multi-sports complex, because ultimately that impacts our economy, and then that will help drive jobs here and really improve the quality of life for all of us. Any questions? I spoke as fast as I could. Anybody? Yes?
What's the future War Memorial Stadium?
Well, we don't know yet. I think that report is due at the end of the year. There's a task force that actually Kathy sits on, since it's right in the middle of Ward 3.
But the stadium would be separate because the stadium is stadium.
Are you talking about the War Memorial Stadium, or are you talking about the park?
Stadium.
Stadium,
Yeah.
stadium.
Yeah.
Now, so that would be something we're out with.
Have to ask ASA. But the reimagining of War Memorial Park and Hyman Park, that task force is due to report back to the city board at the end of the month. In the next month, rather. Anybody else have any questions? No? Well, thank you. Oh, yes, yes. Yes, yes.
I have a question. Look at the capital, our taxes have used to be, well, I'm not a resident here, I come back and forth, but I remember it was 7.5%, and now we look at your receipts, it's like at 9%. So if we pass these bills, are we looking at a threshold increase of maybe to like 10%, which that means we will be losing on our household income. That means when we go out to restaurants or we want to do a staycation here, that means that we're losing more money.
Well, first of all, that would have to be a legislative act. There's a restaurant and lodging tax that is potentially 3%. We pay 2% right now. And it's really bizarre. So if you drive through McDonald's, it's 9% tax. If you eat in a restaurant, it's 11%. Not sure how that happened. It's actually competitive with surrounding areas, but the lodging and restaurant tax are basically going to run our DMO, the Steakhouse, Robinson, the parking decks, the River Market, and then be the marketing arm for Little Rock. Would a higher tax impact you? Well, obviously, yes. But the kinds of initiatives I'm talking about, like the expansion of Statehouse Convention Center or the multi-sports complex, there are lots of different funding possibilities out there. Some that would hopefully not have an impact on an individual. It's one of the missions. or the primary mission of the Commission of Visitors Bureau is to collect that tax. And a lot of restaurateurs in the past have thought, oh my gosh, I've got to pay this, we're just collecting it. And I mean, I for one would say that I'm happy to collect that tax, and I have been for 34 years, because what we've been able to do to transform, especially downtown Little Rock. And as I said, you know, we love those temporary taxpayers. We don't mind if they live outside the city or outside of the country, or, you know, someplace else, because it provides jobs, and it really is the second largest economic driver in the state, and employer, second only to the government, the whole hospitality industry. People just don't even realize that. It's big. How many visitors do you think we had to Placid County last year? Do they have a guess?
I would say maybe, I don't know, about 260,000.
6 million. We had 6 million visitors to the county, where we have more than Northwest Arkansas. I mean, we're the tourism hub, primarily because we're the state capital. The Clinton Library also. Heritage tourism is growing. And all those amateur touring events, when I learned that it was 70% of the economic pie, I was blown away. But especially people your age, they're having kids now. Everybody's playing soccer or baseball or volleyball or basketball, and they travel here and they come with their families and they stay in the hotels and they eat. And we're just losing massive amounts of business because we don't have a big sports complex. It's a big industry. So hospitality, it's not just restaurants and hotels. That would include all the cultural attractions. It would also include parks. But I'll give you a free dinner if you know the answer to this question in trios. Do you know how many parks we have in Little Rock?
42.
All right, well, I have 42. If you get within 10, I will buy you dinner. Who said 66? Dinner. Winner. It's 63. But you win.
Inside.
We have 63 parks. 63 parks. Now, some are tiny and some are huge. You know, one of our little monikers is the city in a park. I don't know how I got off of that tangent. Oh, because that's also part of the hospitality umbrella. Where do you work?
Rock Regional Chancellor.
He is a gift dinner.
He disqualified.